Chris Jericho is obviously one of the biggest stars, a future first ballot Hall of Famer, a bona fide legend in professional wrestling today, no matter what. His time in Mexico, his time in Japan, in ECW, WCW, WWE, and now in Impact Wrestling, along with New Japan Pro Wrestling a little bit before that. Y2J, Chris Jericho, whatever you want to call him, he's already made a career that will never be forgotten. A career that will end up on the history books. And frankly, these days, even though I don't believe he actually appeared on Dynamite last night. I might have to double check that. But he's currently building up to a fantastic feud, a fantastic rivalry with Adam Cole, baby. Just a reflex on that part. So much so that next week, Chris Jericho has a match with Roderick Strong on Dynamite, one-on-one. Again, another surprise, Roderick Strong appearing on AEW after months of not being featured on WWE TV. WWE not even letting us know that he had been future endeavored. So that was a bit of a surprise a few, 2-3 weeks ago when Roderick Strong returned. What I'm trying to get to is Chris Jericho has this fantastic way of just appearing on your TV screen, showing up on Dynamite or on Rampage or in any AEW show and just capturing your attention like that. Because he's that damn good, because he's a legend, and whenever you see him in the ring, he is must see. So much so that you can't really miss what he was going to talk about. But over the past year, I've noticed a bit of a trend when it comes to who Chris Jericho feuds with and what happens to these superstars, what happens to these wrestlers after their Y2J feud. And I'm afraid that the exact same thing is going to happen to Adam Cole, baby. Again, can't stop that. And I'm hoping it doesn't happen to him. But, we go a year ago, he was feuding with Eddie Kingston. And then I get it, Eddie Kingston, he got injured. He's been on the shelf for a bit now. And the last we heard of him, he was challenging for the Ring of Honor World Championship. Unsuccessful in his attempt to win that World Championship. But Eddie Kingston had so much potential to be a big star in AEW. And even though I believe he did beat Chris Jericho, he ultimately won that feud over Y2J. Chris Jericho still featured a lot more in AEW instead of Eddie Kingston. Again, injuries, they happen. You can't really help them. Claudio Castagnoli, again, dealing with this whole Ocho stuff when he became the Ring of Honor World Champion. I get why he did that. I get why he was trying to become the face of Ring of Honor. He was trying to put that brand over. He put the World Championship over. And then he put Claudio Castagnoli over. And Claudio, we all know how good he is. He proves that every single time he's in the ring. Hell, he proved that last night. And the match of the night, it wasn't a steel cage match. The match of the night was Claudio Castagnoli against Phoenix in that double Jeopardy match. But even though Claudio Castagnoli is the current Ring of Honor World Champion, even though he is de facto, or by default, he is the face of Ring of Honor Wrestling, he is still playing second fiddle to Jon Moxley and Bryan Danielson and the BCC. And I'm not saying break up the BCC. I'm not saying have Claudio Castagnoli do his own thing. That works. The BCC is working. The entire story that they're building with the Elite, it is firing on all cylinders. If that steel cage match, the result, Don Callis turning on Kenny Omega, everything that transpired inside a steel cage, again, one hell of a match as well. One hell of a story told there. Fantastic storytelling on AEW's part on that note. If that's anything, just keep that going. But overall, Claudio Castagnoli is a little bit in the background after his feud with Chris Jericho. Action Andretti, he beat Chris Jericho, I believe, in his first match on Dynamite. Again, a shocker. A bona fide shocker. One of the very few that Tony Khan has been able to provide in terms of rookies in AEW's history. Where has that led to? Nowhere. Action Andretti, nowhere to be found. He might show up on Rampage every once in a while, but his name doesn't get thrown out a lot for anything. Not for a TNT Championship match, not for an International Championship match, nothing at all. And Action Andretti is a very talented wrestler. He's proven that. He's proven that on Dark. He's proven that on Elevation. Where is he? What's the story after he beat Chris Jericho? Nothing. He literally played second fiddle to Ricky Starks. He helped Ricky Starks in his feud with the JAS, and then Ricky Starks went on to beat Chris Jericho in his feud, in his rivalry. And now where Ricky Starks is. Again, feuding with a guy who should be the main event or one of the future main eventers in AEW in Jay White. But currently, their feud, Shawn Spears, Ricky Starks, Jay White, Juice Robinson, it's all secondary to the bigger feuds in AEW. This is just over the past year. This is a habit with Chris Jericho feuds, with Chris Jericho rivalries. And whereas whoever's feuding with Y2J, that feud ends, normally Chris Jericho loses that feud. Jericho moves on to the next rivalry, to the next opponent, in this case Adam Cole, Bebe. And his opponent, Tony Khan and the AEW booking committee have to fumble and really think about, what should we do with this guy? He beat Chris Jericho. But where do we go from there? That's my issue with this entire situation. That's a common trend I've been able to identify with Chris Jericho's rivalries over the past year. And that's just over the past year. If you go back even farther, maybe there are even more superstars that have unfortunately fallen to this trend. So what I'm trying to get to is, yes, Chris Jericho is entertaining. Yes, Chris Jericho is a name you want to have in your brand, but I feel like more AEW should take a page out of WWE's book. AEW should take a page out of their own book. Have Chris Jericho be a special attraction in the same vein as Sting. Have him really pick and choose his opponents, pick and choose his spots, pick and choose his matches. That way they matter a whole lot more. And this is mostly based on the fact that AEW has one thing over WWE, and that is a very young, talented, up-and-coming roster of talent that once they get to that top spot, once they get to that main event level, they cannot be stopped. But if you bring in guys like Chris Jericho, and you keep him in the spotlight, and you keep him just taking primary access to these rivalries and these feuds, fans are going to obviously try to go after the more no-name, even though, a Jungle Boy or Ricky Starks or Orange Cassidy or Darby Allin, there's the stars that they should be paying attention to, because that's AEW's future. I don't know. That's just me. That's just something I noticed. That's just my opinion on what Chris Jericho should be doing now. He said in the past he will never officially retire. So in that case, he can't keep doing this full-time forever. And he's one of the very few legends AEW has on their roster that is nearing that age where, he's kind of getting slower. So just have him pick his spots. Have him pick his matches. Don't have him show up so much on Dynamite or on Rampage. Give him the Undertaker treatment. Give him the Sting treatment in AEW, so it matters a whole lot more when he shows up and who he feuds with. And hopefully, again, I'm not a part of the committee. I have no intentions. I have no thoughts of them ever listening to me, so obviously this won't happen. But that's just something that I would personally do after his feud and rivalry with Adam Cole, Bebe, is done. But with that said, what do you think about this entire trend? Do you think it's just a conspiracy theory on my part that whoever is rivals with Chris Jericho and AEW ends up on the losing end, even though they end up winning the feud? Or do you agree with me in the fact that, yeah, it's a trend and it's happening and there's nothing they're doing to stop it, because Y2J keeps appearing on Dynamite and Rampage on a very consistent basis. So with that said, leave your thoughts, comments, and predictions on the comment section below. In the meantime, you know, I'm just talking about some of the things that AEW might be able to improve on. But last night's show in Detroit was fantastic. So with that said, I'm Alexis Carrillo. This has been Wrestling Talk, and tune in later on tonight to Access TV to watch Impact Wrestling. I'll see you next time.